Johnny Sports Network here to provide you with additional Week 4 college football predictions. This is the best of the rest for Week 4 of the college football season. And the first game in the best of the rest this week, Michigan State and number 25 USC. Michigan State is looking for their first win against a top 25 team under Jonathan Smith. They were 0-3 in ranked matchups last season, and in those matchups, they only averaged 9 points a game. Wide receiver Nick Marsh and running back Mekhi Frazier are both injured for Michigan State. Meanwhile, USC's offense has been phenomenal this season so far. Second in the FBS in scoring offense, averaging 55 points a game. They lead the FBS in total offense, averaging 604 yards a game. I have talked a couple times before about Jonathan Smith back when he was at Oregon State, how competitive he was more often than not against ranked competition. But so far at Michigan State, it's been a complete struggle for the Spartans. And also USC's defense leads the FBS in sacks with 14 on the season so far. And at the end of the night, I just feel like USC's offense is going to be too much for Michigan State. And I don't have it written down in my notes, but Jaden Mayava, he is somewhere between 4th and 7th in the FBS in passing yards. And I think USC, they do win by more than 19 points is what we're looking for. I think they win by 21 points. If Michigan State were to cover the 18.5 points, it would be late in the game where USC's defense is playing complacent, but I don't see that happening. I think USC, they win by at least 3 touchdowns. Up next, we have the one game for the college football fans who want nothing more or nothing less than one more game to conclude their college football Saturday. Fresno State and Hawaii. And I discussed both of these teams back in week 0. Fresno State against Kansas in week 0, and I did briefly discuss after the week 0 games that Fresno State's performance against Kansas was fairly disappointing. But Fresno State, they have won 3 in a row. Last week, Fresno State quarterback E.J. Warner, he threw 4 touchdown passes last week, but it was against Southern. He is completing 72.4% of his passes so far this season. Against FBS teams this season, E.J. Warner has thrown for 476 yards, no touchdown passes, 5 interceptions. Fresno State running back Bryson Donaldson, he's 8th in the FBS in rushing yards with 325. As far as run defense for Hawaii, they are slightly above average, 59th in run defense so far this season. Micah Alejado is returning for Hawaii this week. At least it is anticipated that he will return to the Hawaii lineup this week, as he did return to practice this week. Fresno State on the season so far, 74th in pass defense. And I talked about after week 0 that if Micah Alejado can stay healthy throughout the season, then I think Hawaii can be a dark horse in the Mountain West. As I did admire the effort that he had in week 0 against Stanford, playing through injury. But Hawaii's offensive line has given up 14 sacks this season, which is the most in the FBS. And in a game that I think is going to go either way, I am going to pick Hawaii to win by 3 points. I just think that Hawaii, they've just shown a lot of improvement already so far this season. They're 35th in total defense. Fresno State, they're 61st. Even though E.J. Warner is the more experienced quarterback in this matchup, I think Micah Alejado is the more talented quarterback in this matchup. Arkansas and Memphis. Memphis going into the season, they were one of the favorites to not only win the AAC, but to be one of the favorites in the group of 5 to get the automatic group of 5 playoff bid. And despite only having 9 returning starters from a year ago, they still are at 3-0 to start the season, which you at this point in the season should and maybe need to take with a grain of salt, considering the competition they've played against. Although they did have a dominant win on the road last week against Troy 28-7, and we saw Troy compete with Clemson really well on the road the week prior. Memphis is currently 21st in total defense, only giving up about 244.3 yards per game. If I recall correctly, Arkansas opened up favored by 6.5 points, and it's gone up to 7.5. And even though this is a road game for Arkansas, I just think that Arkansas's offense is going to be too much for Memphis. Arkansas is currently 5th in total offense, averaging 569.3 yards per game. They lead the FBS in third down conversion percentage, converting on third down almost 72% of the time. And they are scoring an average of 47.7 points per game, which is 11th in the FBS in scoring offense. And quarterback Taylon Green, he's in the top 15 in rushing yards so far this season as a quarterback. And last week we did see Arkansas go toe-to-toe on the road against Ole Miss last week in a high-scoring game. I'm going to go with Arkansas to win by, at the minimum, 10 points. And I do think they will cover the 7.5 they're currently favored by, as this is a must-respond week for Arkansas. As head coach Sam Pittman, he entered the season on the hot seat, and he needs a good season. And I do think Arkansas, they do rebound. SMU and TCU. And before I go any further, I want to point out, everyone I have seen predict this game, they've all said the same thing. That TCU is not only going to win with ease, but they're going to cover with ease. And based off of my personal experiences, usually when that happens, the opposite ends up being the result. And going into this recording, I was going to pick SMU to cover the 6.5. Because when I look at the numbers for this game, TCU may be 16th in total offense, averaging 515.5 yards a game. SMU is 47th in total offense, averaging 435.3 yards a game. And SMU quarterback Kevin Jennings has completed 70.5% of his passes so far this season. As far as scoring offenses, SMU's 38th, averaging 38.3 points a game. TCU, they're 15th, averaging 45 points a game. TCU is 72nd in total defense, giving up an average of 337.5 yards a game. And based off of all of that, I was ready to pick SMU with the points. But then I get to SMU's defense. 112th in total defense. They're allowing an average of 426.7 yards a game. 132nd in pass defense. And TCU quarterback Josh Hoover is one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the entire FBS. And as a bonus, TCU's offensive line has yet to give up a sack this season. I do think this will be a high-scoring game. However, I still think TCU, they end up winning this game by double digits. I would say in the neighborhood of 41-28 or 45-34. But if SMU ends up covering or even winning outright, I wouldn't be surprised either. Because as I did mention already, everyone I've seen so far is picking TCU to win with ease. And for our final game of the best of the rest for week 4, we have a marquee Big 12 matchup, Arizona State and Baylor. The big question for Arizona State going into the season is they did return a lot of production from last year's team. The team who won the Big 12, they were a 4th and 13 stop away from going to the semifinals of the college football playoff. But how do you replace Cam Skattebo? They acquired Kanye Udo in the transfer portal in the offseason from Army. And a lot of people, including myself, thought that he was going to become that next great Arizona State running back. But so far this season, it's been running back Raleek Brown taking over the Arizona State backfield, averaging 8.3 yards a carry. Arizona State quarterback Sam Leavitt, he's only completed 58.1% of his passes so far this season. Meanwhile, Baylor quarterback Sawyer Robertson, second in the FBS in passing yards, with 1,070 on the season so far. Baylor is 14th in total offense, averaging 517.3 yards a game. Meanwhile, Arizona State, 60th in total offense, averaging 408 yards a game. Defensively, however, Arizona State, 63rd in total defense, giving up an average of 326.3 yards a game, while Baylor, they are 80th in total defense, giving up an average of 356 yards a game. Back in week 1, a big reason why Baylor lost to Auburn was because they couldn't stop Jackson Arnold running the football. They did a better job the next week against SMU quarterback Kevin Jennings. Sam Leavitt has shown that he can run the football when he needs to. He had 443 rushing yards last season, along with 5 rushing touchdowns. And so far this season, he has 3 rushing touchdowns and he's averaging 5.8 yards a carry. And I have gone back and forth in deciding who I think is going to win this game. I will say, no matter who it is that wins, I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, and whoever wins it will win by 3 points. I think it's going to be that kind of game. And I am going to go with Baylor. I just find Sawyer Robertson the better quarterback in this matchup. And I do think Baylor having the home field is going to pay dividends for them in this matchup, and I do think that's the difference in this game. And that will do it for my week 4 best of the rest. Comment your predictions down below. If there is a game that I did not cover in today's best of the rest or in the main 7 and you'd like my thoughts on it, please leave a comment in the comment section and I will give you a response. I do my best to respond to every single comment I receive. And that is all I have for you today. My Week 3 college football takeaways and NFL Week 2 takeaways will be on YouTube Shorts. Enjoy all the games this weekend. Until next time, Vegas is always watching.